good day. Hope you're all well. I am here today at the 7th European Film Festival. The European Film Festival is a partnership project of the EU, delegation to South Africa, and 12 European embassies and cultural agencies. Please visit the festival website at www.eurofilmfestival.co.za for details about other films and special activities taking place at the festival. Please also follow us on social media. So I have to say, welcome, Johannes. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks that you're having me.
It's a pleasure. So this is Johannes Naber, who's made a film called Curveball, which talks a little bit about what happened in the early 2000s and the first Iraq War, and how effectively intelligence agencies went rogue on a lot of levels. That led to the lives of many people being lost and effectively destabilizing the Middle East in a very drastic way. Curveball is a film that is about an informer, or informant, if I could put it that way, who approaches the German government and says to them that he's got proof of weapons of mass destruction. The WMDs that we all know did not exist in Iraq at that point in time. Johannes, how did you come about making this film? What interested you, and why the decision to make a film about Curveball, as we call him?
Yes, I mean, it's very clear that this whole Iraq war in 2003 was based on lies, and these weapons of mass destruction didn't exist. Everybody knows that. But for us, it's important that the role that our own government, our German government, played in that game, because they always pretended that they're against the war, and they said that they want to prevent it, they're fighting against it. It was a left-wing government these days, but not many people know in Germany that they covered that informant who was a liar, and they knew that he was a liar before the war, before Colin Powell's big speech in the UN Security Council, where he used that information as a justification to go to war. And he said it's a secret information. It's from a third country. He cannot reveal. But now we know it was this information that the German government had, and they didn't say it is wrong. And the question that we want to ask is, why did they do that?
So how did information come into the public arena in the first place? I mean, I do know there was a documentary called War of Lies, which was around this particular issue and this particular person. But how did it come to light? Was it just from an interest perspective, how would it become public knowledge?
Yes, it was journalists who found this guy and did research, and then the informant himself went to the press, gave interviews, gave a big interview to The Guardian, I think in 2007, and revealed himself as the source of this fake information. And then other journalists came. In America, a lot of politicians and former CIA people revealed what they knew about the case, about the lie, about the weapons of mass destruction. Everybody knows that, actually. It was just collecting information that's out. And we don't reveal anything secret, anything that's new, but we just put together the pieces of a puzzle.
And present that in a fairly satirical and funny manner. You know, was that a choice for you as a filmmaker?
Yes, definitely. We asked ourselves, what is the right way? What is the genre of this movie? We wanted to bring a fact to the public that is disturbing them. That was clear. But it's also a complex that is very bizarre and surreal. This whole thing, an Iraqi informant comes to Germany claiming he knows about this rolling bioweapons fabrications, and everybody believes him because they want to have this big information. It's very bizarre. And the whole BND, the German Secret Service, is very bizarre, actually. you don't know that much about it. I assume, I suppose, but it's a very bizarre. They're bizarre people, and therefore it was clear to me that I want to keep the surreal feeling of the whole story by keeping some kind of humor. And in the end, actually, it's such a sad story that you need some moments to laugh to get through it. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming from South Africa, we understand the fact that when in pain you have to laugh. It's the only way to kind of deal with the absurdity of the situation you have around you. So in terms of making the film, how did you go about choosing your actors? Let's start there. What was key for you in terms of casting for this, and how did you go about casting for it?
Yeah, the first thing that was clear to me was Sebastian Blomberg, who is the lead. This Dr. Wolf, who's the bioweapons expert of the Bundesnachrichtendienst. He's an actor I've worked several times with, and I love him very much. And it was clear to me that it's a perfect role for him, and I want to continue the work that we successfully had in the past. And then actually I collected everybody around him. And the most interesting thing was maybe the casting of this Rafid Alwan character, Curveball, this Iraqi guy who brought this information to Germany. And we found a quite in Denmark quite famous actor, but in Germany not many people knew him, Dar Salim, who also starred in some US action movies, but in Germany not many people knew him. And he's originally from Iraq. His parents come from there, and he speaks the language and has a feeling for the culture. And that was very important for me, to have an authentic character there, even though he plays it kind of funny.
Yeah. So you've made a film. This is a narrative, and you use the term based on a true story. So understanding from when you create a documentary, for example, it is completely true, and everything has to be fundamentally factual. But for an audience, when a director says based on a true story, and I love the fact that you say unfortunately, but based on a true story, how much of the story is true? How much creative license have you taken in terms of telling that story? How do you meld those two things together when you utilize a story that is within the public realm and is meant to represent history as it is?
Actually, I think in the beginning it says it's a true story. Unfortunately, that's the word that's added.
Yes.
And I see it like that. It's not only based on a true story. It is a true story, but not everything happened exactly like we show it, because we make a fictional movie out of it. That means in some cases we have to simplify, we have to dramatize the facts, we have to put things together to make a very complex story understandable in 1.5 hours. And I think that's a quite normal way, but actually you have to be aware where you cross the line from truth to a made-up story. You're completely right, and that's something we talked about very much. And I think you have to be honest to yourself that the motivations of the character and the motivations of what happens are true, even though maybe some character you exaggerate some facts or something. You have to be very, very clear that the motivations are still the same, and that the key plot points, the key narration lines are true. That were the points that were important for us. I think it's the truth through my eyes, through my narrative eyes.
It's the truth through your narrative's eyes. Always key and interesting. From a truth perspective, we live in a world these days we've got to double check our facts, if we could put it that way. We have a president in the US who really plays with facts all over the place. How do you believe your film fits into trying to change that narrative, trying to expose audiences to understanding? And very specifically, let's start here. We're talking about a film that is set almost 20 years ago. You and I, in terms of our age, both understand, and we saw it. I mean, I literally remember watching live that UN justification for war and understanding completely from the outset in my own head that Bush was going to go to war whether or not 9/11 happened. He was going to go into Iraq. He had unfinished business. His dad had not finished in there. And I think the world kind of watched in abject horror as these lies were told to our faces. And it wasn't that we didn't see it, we all saw it. But you look at then, and there's kind of a naivety at that point in time around what truth is, and the boldness of seeing, officials lie to you and lie to the world in the way that they did in those days. And these days we've got social media, which didn't exist at that point in time. Things are a little bit more nuanced, if I could put it that way. People lie outright. How do you believe this film sits within the context of speaking truth to power, if I could put it that way, taking the story from then and how it fits into the world we live in right now, and tying the links between 2003 to the links of 2020, and how that narrative has kind of moved from there to then, and why a film like this is important in terms of discussing what was then, but also discussing what is now.
Yes, I mean, governments always lied to the public through the whole history, especially when it came to wars. They didn't tell the truth. But this is a new quality. The Iraq War and the Bush administration, this was a new quality of lie, because they knew that everybody knew that they were lying, and they didn't care about that fact. That was new. That was something very disturbing, actually, and that was a new quality and opened a box or something that we now have in full bloom with what happens in America and everywhere in the world. I think that it's important for us media people, for us storytellers, to work on a kind of truth consensus in our societies. That means that it's clear that truth for everybody is something different. My truth is a different truth than your truth to a lot of things. But we try to work on a truth consensus, on something we both can consent, we both can accept. So we have a common basis for something we can build on stuff, and this is something that is going to be lost more and more in the present, because the people move in so different directions, and they don't accept the truth of the other side anymore. And the press is so diversive. It's not anymore the fact that, as 20 years ago, it was clear that the mainstream press tried to find that consensus of truth in a society, even though they were struggling a lot about what is it and what is the direction and something. But in the end, there was a feeling of there is a consensus that we all can rely on. But this consensus is gone, and this is actually the question is, what can we do to get it back? And there the governments have to work actually on getting back the trust of the people. Because one lie is destroying so much. You can tell 100 times the truth. If you lie to them one time and it comes out, they will not believe you anymore, as much as they did before.
Mm. So, in terms of this story, in the kind of German public's view, what has been the response to realizing that, in fact, the US used the BND's faux pas? I mean, it's a bad word to use, but the BND's behavior, the BND's asset. That's what they would call it, intelligence services. An asset who wasn't an asset and that had been discredited. How has the German public response been to this information, and has there been discussion or debate around what the intelligence community did and how your government has behaved?
The point is that this source hasn't been discredited by the Germans. Not until today. Officially, they have not been discrediting this source. And the government didn't do it, and the BND didn't do it, even though they knew it's wrong. And the German public is shocked by that fact, because they are not aware of that. They thought the Germans were against the war and they did everything to prevent it. And now we just put together the pieces of a puzzle, and it makes clear they haven't. They haven't did everything. They haven't done anything.
That I find quite interesting and disingenuous, that you have an asset who you know is telling a lie, and the Americans go to war, and then certain European countries followed them, as we know, and your government, which is the one who holds this asset, is then says we against this war. It's just quite it's as this is why it's fast on a lot of levels.
Exactly.
Yes, our asset. We're not discrediting our asset, but we also don't believe in going to war because we know our asset isn't real. It really feels a little bit like a George Orwell novel, a little bit of science fiction, a little bit of insanity on a lot of levels, and this is the world that we live in at this point in time. For you, what do you hope this film will bring to audiences, and how do you hope that people will engage and take away, what will they take away from this film for you?
I hope that some questions will be answered now that haven't been answered the last 15 years, and that the people who were in charge that days are forced now to say what moved them and why did they do that? Why did that happen that way? That's just something I want to know. And a lot of people want to know that. That's actually the main thing that I want to achieve here in Germany. And on the second, it's a film about truth and how to handle with truth. It's clear that we have to find a new approach to this term truth. It's not as easy as it was 30 years ago, and we cannot act like it's easy still. We have to find a new way of handling that term. And maybe that's the other thing that I want to achieve, that the people start thinking about that.
So that brings me to your main protagonist, Wolf. I mean, the ethics of this person. You start this film out in Iraq, and he comes back. And as you say throughout the film, he's a dog with a bone. He's very determined that something's wrong and rotten in Iraq. I understand, coming from the global south, that very often that's the Western view. If you go into a place, there has to be something wrong. It can't not be this simple or this easy. How did you deal or try and deal with the ethics of this person? Because from a viewer's perspective, from my perspective, coming from the south, is here's this white man going into a country determined to find something that's not there. It's almost kind of confirmation bias. But you literally you're like, I want to find this, I'm going to find this, and then this character has to flip and all of a sudden become the hero on some levels. How did you go about creating that character and trying to deal with the ethics of who he is? Because he's unlikable for me on a lot of levels at the beginning, and on some levels he's unlikable at the end, because, hold on, guy, you can't go from here to here and all of a sudden try and be the hero in a space that you built up yourself. How do you deal with that as a director? How do you try and carve out that personality and deal with the ethics of who this person is?
Yeah, it's very interesting what you say, because everything is completely right. And that's a very important perspective on the whole thing. But it's not Wolf's perspective. Wolf's perspective is he's the good guy who is fighting for the truth. Mm-hmm. And he's a scientist and he fights against everything that's not based on science and on the scientific truth. It's something that he holds very high. It's a big value for him, and that's something he wants to do. And he doesn't notice how he corrupts himself by wanting the things to be true. He helps them to be believable, and that's something he doesn't. He's not aware of that, and the point when he becomes aware of that, it's too late, and he's completely broken then, and anew he tries to fight for the truth, the other truth that it's just has been coming out, that the whole thing is a lie. And he thinks that everybody else must also, like him, think that truth is the most important thing and the biggest value. That is something for him very important. He thinks truth is the biggest value, and he's fighting for that. That gives him authority to do whatever is needed. And he's not aware of the fact that he's part of a bigger machine, of a colonialistic machine of bringing truth to places where the truth is brought by white people. No.
Yeah. Well, their truth, as you say.
Their truth is brought. Their truth. Yeah. That's the truth that everybody has to accept there. That's the problem.
Yeah. Exactly. So speaking of Rafid, who is Curveball, so this is a true character. Have you engaged directly with him? Has he seen the film? What has his response been if he has seen the film? Just in terms of that real life character, how's he engaged with the film? How's he engaged with you? And how do you find his representation and him, if I can put it that way, between real life and the film itself?
He's not represented in the movie at all. I didn't meet him. I didn't talk to him. And that was a very, very clear decision that I made. I talked with a lot of people who talked with him, actually. Yeah. I saw a lot of footage of him talking about the whole story. And I think I have a clear picture of him. But as history shows, he's a very unreliable source. So I didn't count on getting some very big new views on the whole story that I can rely on by meeting him, by talking to him. And in addition, I was afraid that somebody or he himself could say that we adopted his view on the whole thing when I talked to him. And therefore, we decided that the negative outcome is bigger than the possible positive outcome when we meet him. And that's why we didn't involve him, because he's such an unreliable source. And I'm very interested to show him the movie and to see how he reacts and what he says. I think we have been quite nice to him. There is a lot of other possibilities to show him in this kind of story, because actually he was the liar that not made the war possible, but worked on the justification on the war, was used for the justification of the war, and in the end he didn't speak up against it. That's a big responsibility, and we don't focus that in the movie. Actually, in our movie, he's a nice guy, he's a liar, he's somebody who's an opportunistic guy who tries to get through somehow. We don't mention this big responsibility, and when we do it, actually we show somebody who's completely, it's too big for him, it's too much for him. And there are a lot of other views that would have been possible on this character, but we were aware, we were clear that our main focus is not on him, but on the Secret Service, on the BND, on the German Secret Service and the German government. That's the people we want to talk about.
Okay, well, thank you so much for engaging and chatting to me about the film. I hope our audiences will enjoy it as much as I did and have a good giggle every so often. I know that you're part of a live Zoom discussion called Films and Fake News today, the 18th of November at 6 p.m. I'm assuming that's South African time. Good luck with that. I think you're going to be engaging with some interesting filmmakers around this particular topic. Most of whom I'm sure are doing this from a documentary perspective, unlike you, who's come in brought a narrative curve to all of this. Good luck with the film. Thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to more audiences engaging. I would like to end with saying thank you to you and to your viewers for your time and interest, and please, etc. The European Film is a partnership project for the EU delegation to South Africa and 12 European embassies and cultural agencies. The festival ends on the 22nd of November, so there's a good month ahead of us in order to watch the film. And please visit the festival website, www.eurofilmfest.co.za, for details about films and special activities, and follow us on social media. Thank you so much, Johannes.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. See you.